Now, George Santos was elected back in November to represent New York's 3rd Congressional District, which includes parts of the North Shore of Long Island and Queens. Now, during the campaign, Santos made numerous claims about his biography that he now acknowledges were false. For example, Santos claimed that he attended Baruch College and NYU, but neither school has record of his attendance. Santos also lied about his work history, as well as making several false claims about his personal life. He said he was a quote-unquote proud Jew, only to backtrack and say he was Jew-ish. Now, on Twitter, Santos also claimed that his mother had died on 9/11. Quote, 9/11 claimed my mother's life, he wrote. But a few months later, on Twitter, Santos wrote that his mother had died in 2016. Now, on Tuesday, I spoke directly to Santos to try to better understand his side of the story. Here's part of our conversation. My question is, do you have no shame? Do you have no shame in the people who are now, you're asking to trust you to go and be their voice for them, their families, and their kids in Washington?
Tulsi, I can say the same thing about the Democrats and the party. Look at Joe Biden. Joe Biden's been lying to the American people for 40 years. He's the president of the United States. Democrats resoundingly support him. Do they have no shame? I've made this very clear.
This is not about the Democratic Party, though. This is about your relationship, frankly, with the people who've entrusted you to go and fight for them.
We can debate my resume and how I worked with firms such as Goldman and Citigroup.
Is it debatable or is it just false?
No,
is it debatable or is it just false?
No, it's not false at all. It's debatable. I can sit down and explain to you what you can do in private equity, in capital intro, via servicing limited partners and general partners. And we can have this discussion that's going to go way above the American people's head.
You just kind of highlighted, I think, my concern, the concern that people at home have. You're saying that this discussion will go way above the heads of the American people, basically insulting their intelligence. Congressman-elect Santos, we've given you a lot of time. I think the time that is owed is to the people of New York's 3rd. It's hard to imagine how they could possibly trust your explanations when you're not really even willing to admit the depth of your deception. Now, after that interview, we heard from a lot of people on all ends of the political spectrum. There were some conservatives who were suggesting that Santos's lies paled in comparison to the lies told by top Democrats about their own personal lives. They also suggest that even if Santos is a liar, it's better for the country if Republicans hold on to as many seats as possible in the House. Now, on the liberal side, this show received praise from outlets and people that are normally attacking us. Many are welcoming the federal and local investigations into George Santos that have begun, even though it's not quite yet clear what crime he may have committed. Now, some of the architects of the Russia collusion hoax, like disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok, were especially thrilled. In fact, Strzok is now on social media implying, without any evidence, no surprise, that Santos may be a pawn of Russian intelligence. Now, if you're like most Americans, you care about the truth more than partisan politics. But unfortunately, there are too many politicians and cable news shows who only care about raw partisan political calculations. And that's why they're not willing to call out anyone from their own team. As a result, permanent Washington is overrun with liars and opportunists who have no problem whatsoever deceiving the American people just to further their own interests. Now, in our interview, George Santos invoked lies by Democrats as an excuse for his own lies. It's not. It's inexcusable. But at the same time, it is also true that many of the same Democrats who are gleeful about Santos being actually held accountable publicly for his lies are deafeningly silent about Joe Biden and his deceptions, about his own biography. Now, there's too many to count, but here's just one.
I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robben's Island.
One of the most saintly guys I ever knew, because I got arrested trying to see him when I went down to South Africa. Nelson Mandela.
I came back from South Africa trying to see Nelson Mandela and getting arrested for trying to see him on Robben's Island. He was in prison.
Now, Joe Biden didn't just lie about being arrested as a civil rights activist. He also lied about having 3 undergraduate degrees, about finishing in the top half of his law school class. He lied about his family's history in the coal mines. He's plagiarized speeches and falsely claimed to have visited Afghanistan to see a quote-unquote heroic naval officer. But he's not alone. We can't forget the time Hillary Clinton claimed to have landed in Iraq under heavy sniper fire in 2008.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
When pictures emerged showing Hillary Clinton's landing in Iraq and there was no sniper fire, Hillary Clinton changed her story just to say she misspoke. Sounds familiar. This is just one of the many lies that she's told. But the point here is, lying politicians are nothing new. Now, George Santos's lies are inexcusable, but let's be real. He is a small fish in a sea of sharks in Washington who've been deceiving us for a very long time and at great cost and consequence to the American people, our security, and our freedom. Now, every one of our elected leaders in Washington has taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. There is no greater form of disrespect of democracy and the Constitution and the American people than lying and attempting to deceive us. Yet we have far too many people leading our nation's institutions in Congress, in the executive branch, in the national security state, in the mainstream media, and in these big tech companies who actually believe that it's acceptable to deceive us. They often justify these deceptions by saying, as George Santos did on Tuesday, that the American people just can't handle the truth, or that they know what's best for us better than we do. But when leaders use deception to manipulate us and to get what they want, then we, the people, can't make informed decisions. That's not a functioning democracy. That's a dictatorship. Now, remember the deception from the media, senior intelligence officials, and big tech regarding Hunter Biden's laptop just days before the 2020 election. Now, they knew this was a calculated decision. They knew that if voters actually saw what was on that laptop, then we might not vote for Joe Biden. And a recent poll was just done, actually confirmed that this concern was true. So they lied. They misled us. They said this is likely Russian misinformation, and then they took it a step further and censored anyone who tried to share it. This blatant deception directly undermined our election and our democracy. Now consider the lies that we were told by both Democrat and Republican administrations and leaders in the Pentagon, who for 2 decades told us we're winning the war in Afghanistan, send more troops, send more money. Well, these lies led to the deaths of 2,456 of my brothers and sisters in uniform and sent thousands more home injured, spending more than $2 trillion of our taxpayer dollars to enrich the military-industrial complex. Now, President Bush and his administration, they lied to us all about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction as an excuse to start a costly war that resulted in more than 4,431 American lives lost and the rise of ISIS. Of course, the big lies aren't just used to justify foreign intervention and regime change wars. The FDA and the CDC, they lied to us when they told us, you got to take the vaccine in order to prevent us from getting or spreading COVID. Not true. Tony Fauci, he lied to us about the efficacy of cloth masks and surgical masks. And he also lied under oath about his role in funding dangerous gain-of-function research in Wuhan. There are more examples. James Clapper, he lied under oath about collecting data on U.S. citizens. John Brennan lied to Congress about illegally tapping U.S. senators' phones. The FBI, the Department of Justice, they lied and pretended the Steele dossier was credible, kickstarting the Russia collusion hoax. The FBI went on to use that very same dossier, as well as other falsified information, to obtain secret surveillance warrants to illegally spy on American citizens. These people have created a culture where lies and deceit are normalized, they're acceptable, even justified in their own minds. And all these examples that I've cited, they've expressed no remorse, and there's been no accountability. The survival of our democracy depends on our ability, we the people's ability, to trust that those who lead these institutions in our society, like I said, in Congress, the executive branch, the security state, as well as in the mainstream media and big tech, they must be led by people of integrity who are committed to protecting our democracy and our freedom and serving the best interests of the American people and our country.